There we go. All right. So you guys know where we left off. You are standing by. I'll share the map to you again. You guys can always bring it up yourselves too, of course, but I'll just share it to you manually there. There you are. You are standing basically where you see where number 9 is on the map, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing that's in the middle of the road there. That's the statue, and that's where the three of you are. Wallace has just run into town. You guys are standing by the statue. So, what do you guys want to do?
So the explosion at the bank just happened, right? Or not
No,
the bank, but
no, the earthquake.
just happened?
It's
The
11.
earthquake just happened. Okay.
Yeah, it's 11:31. So you're still presumably, based on the previous loops, the bank robbery will happen in a little over 15 minutes, and then the whole town will kind of fall in a little bit after that.
You guys want to check and see if the jail fell apart and check the quarry?
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys are going to head over behind the jail then to where the crack was, or what are you doing?
Yeah, let's see if the wall is still mended, or if
Okay.
the earthquake broke.
Okay. The town is still in a bit of a panic there. Everybody's still kind of... You hear shouts from all directions, basically, people checking on other people. You hear a couple of voices that you recognize just from, the southern part of town there. There's another ruckus inside of the saloon just from, people, glasses falling, that kind of thing. Wallace, you see him rushing down the street, and he kind of ducks in as you guys are still kind of moving your way over to the jail. You see him run down the street and rush into the general store. Which is where most of the noise was coming from, where the horse sound came from, the horse running away. But you're kind of carefully making your way back behind the jail. Nobody seems to be taking too much notice of you. Everybody's kind of worried about this earthquake that apparently is not normal for them. But you kind of make your way down the street a little ways and look, and behind the wall there, you still see that crack that you had mended earlier in the day, 25 minutes before this point. Is still holding. Now, it's a little bit bigger than it had been when you left it, but it does not look like it's grown to any significant point. Certainly nobody could fit through what's left, is how I'd say that.
Okay.
So you're all standing behind the jail, outside the sheriff's office, in a town that is still in a little bit of panic. It's now 11:32, 11:33 maybe. What are you guys doing?
Can I just talk to the group real quick about something?
Yeah, of course.
I'm gonna let them know my little experience with Hetty inside of the quarry, and see if everyone wants to jump on board and maybe run to the quarry and see if we can get a little bit deeper in there since she's still stuck in jail. What do you think, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if she's not there to knock him out this time, knock all of us out this time, then maybe it'll be worth it. So.
Yeah, unless that shovel floats and does its own thing, probably not going to get brave with the shovel. You want to head off to the quarry?
Yeah.
Well, you guys are kind of already on your way there anyways, and you can see from where you're at on the road there, you can actually see to the kind of ramp that leads down into the quarry, which is where actually Peter initially lost view of Hetty when she had run down the ramp to head down that way. And of course, Mammy had given you some guidance that would be where you should head anyways. So you're kind of already on your way there. You've made your way over now. 11:35 only took you another half a minute or a minute and a half rather to get down there. At the top of the ramp, you see that this sloping kind of carved walkway goes back and forth and bends back on itself, and then keeps kind of snaking its way down to the base. There are some ladders to be able to climb down and everything. You make your way down to the actual cave entrance over another span of a couple of more minutes. We'll call it 11:37, 11:39, somewhere around there. But you've made your way to the entrance to the cave. You even from the outset of it, before you even actually step inside, you can immediately just feel something Peter already did, but you guys hadn't quite experienced just yourself yet. Is that the place, the air, just even standing at the entrance, you can see it's pitch black inside. The entrance to the shaft there goes in a little ways, and then turns off, and you can't see around that corner. It gets so dark. So before you even step inside, though, I mean, just from the outside, you can feel that there's this dull heat coming from the entrance there, where all of this humidity, basically, of this place is just so stagnant and still inside it that the air is just stale and cloying. It's super, super humid. You can see drips of moisture along the walls, even from here where you're still light outside. It looks very claustrophobic, really, even from the outside. So you're going to go ahead and step in?
Yeah.
I'm good.
Peter, light source, what are you guys doing for being able to see? Because none of you guys can see in the dark.
Yeah, I'm gonna cast my my light source, and then we'll go together. I'll have each orb orbiting each of us.
Okay. All right. So you have one spare, so there's a pair of them over your head. But each of you have a floating orb that, as long as you stay somewhat near Peter, I think it's, what, 30 feet or 60 feet or something like that. But as long as you guys are somewhat near each other, you have a little floating ball of light above your head that is kind of illuminating the space around you so you can see in here. You step in, it is very claustrophobic in here. The tunnels are plenty wide, but because the air just feels so heavy, it's kind of weighing down on you, and it really feels like this place is, like a grave almost. Not in a morbid sense, but just in a way that it feels like you're buried in here. You get the very deep sense of being buried alive, kind of a feeling from it. But the place sounds silent. You are hearing a deep rumbling coming from very far in, but beyond that, there is just no noise in this whole cavern, and you get the feeling that it's so quiet in here that if somebody was even at the very ends of this tunnel, half a mile away down the end of the tunnel there, that you would hear it if somebody dropped a pin, just because it's so quiet in here. The panic of the town is kind of so far away now that you're not even hearing that so much. But you kind of make your way in. You come around one bend where it turns off to the right a little bit and goes down a little further, and then you come to an intersection, and it's kind of a Y shape. So you're coming from the bottom of the Y, and one goes kind of off to the right and forward, and off to the left and forward, where it looks like it splits into two different shafts. So which way are you guys going?
I'll kind of whisper to the group so they know that I've gone to the right and a right again, and that's where I found all the explosives and got bloated up.
Wasn't there a part of the thing that Mammy told us was directions, right? Like stay right or go left or something like that?
So
Turn
that,
right, something like that?
Peter, go ahead and elaborate on that just as a reminder on how that happened.
You can tell us about... Oh, no, we were all there and saw it, huh? So,
That's the thing, is you didn't actually. That was something specifically that you guys were there, but Mammy told Peter alone, just straight into his mind. You guys didn't hear that part. Now, Peter did tell you that when you guys stepped outside. Yeah, but you guys didn't witness it. Peter told you that, that's all.
Yeah, she just kept saying, turn right, turn right.
So is that what you're gonna do? You're gonna go right?
I'm thinking we're gonna turn right. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Okay. So you start heading your way down here. You notice that the floor in here is so beaten down with just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, over time, basically walking through this thing, that where other parts of the tunnel, you would have expected in a mine shaft to have kind of rocks here and there and that kind of stuff. This place is just so well traveled, basically, that it still feels pretty smooth. But you can definitely get the impression that this hasn't seen use in a while. But you start to make your way down to the right, and before long, another 30 yards or so, which, I mean, you guys are kind of moving a little bit carefully because of how dark it is, and just the weight of the air almost feels like it's slowing you a bit. You come to what looks like the tunnel, an end of this where the tunnel has collapsed in, and there's a lot of debris around it. In fact, just from roll... I guess all three of you really roll an investigation check just to give an idea of what may have happened. Peter already went through this, but he was at a little bit of a rush before, and you guys, are taking your time a little bit more this time, so we'll give you guys an opportunity to look around. You don't need to roll it in the tower or anything, so just like Peter did, you can just throw it in the regular box.
Alright. You take care of yourself.
Peter, having been in here before, you kind of noticed some of these details already, and you just didn't really spend the time to look at them, let alone mentally process what it was you were seeing, because you were kind of in a hurry trying to chase down Hetty. But looking around, when you come to this area that's been collapsed in, the struts that are supporting the roof are still there, and they've tried, you get the impression that they were clearing this part, but it fell in at one point, and they've cleared most of the rubble out of the way to allow people through. And you see, looking around as you're kind of past this, especially having worked in some demolition areas with a mage cadre in the past. Anyways, you see the familiar signs, things that you've always been used to seeing, that explosives were used here at one point. Looking around, you see these tiny bits of very aged ceramic that look like they were blown apart. Essentially, what were small bombs that were contained inside of ceramic shells, like a old style grenade, for lack of a better term. You do smell kind of sulfurish. There's just a dim sense of sulfur in the air that kind of sits on your tongue in a weird way. But yeah, it looks like they'd blown this part out basically to try to clear this path to let people back through after it had caved in. But you go down a little bit further, you pass on through that, and it looks like it splits again. And this time you can see down the path to the left, and it continues further than, like, it goes straight further than the light, meaning that you don't see any kind of a turn off or anything like that. But it goes on for a ways, so much so that it's outside the range of what your light can see. Off to the right, from this intersection, you can see another similar cave-in with this kind of a structure is actually broken all the way down, so much so that there's not much way to be able to fit through. There's a small hole, but other than that, it looks like the rocks have kind of caved in the whole space. It does look like there's a tunnel that turns off from that, though, that goes right again, just before that kind of exploded part of it. What are you guys doing?
Up to you guys. I think I went to the right. I went to that little opening, and that's where the bombs were last time.
You do remember specifically that as soon as you got close to that is when you found the disturbed spot in the ground where something had been dug up.
Do we go double check and make sure there's still not a bomb there in case Heidi wasn't the original one that planted it or something? I'm guessing she was, but just in case.
Do you remember what you saw, Peter?
Yeah, when I got there, one of the holes was missing a small square-like thing. I could only assume it was dynamite or a bomb of some sort. And then there should be a long string, almost like a fuse of some sort, or like a detonator cord, and boxes every few feet.
And that is what blew up the last time that you were down here.
You guys want to run down that section since Hetty's no longer down here?
Sure.
Okay. So you head down towards that same route that Peter had gone previously. You come to the end of this. There is, just as you're coming up close to the end, you can see the kind of line that comes off to the right, the smaller tunnel that goes off to the right just before that cave in. And you see that it doesn't actually go very far when you're getting closer. Now that Peter was in a rush at this because he was chasing somebody the last time he was here, but now that you guys are able to kind of spend a moment and look around, you see that this one that turns off to the right just before that cave in isn't a full tunnel, but rather just a small kind of side room, essentially, where supplies have been stored. And you see a row of barrels against one side. It does go down a little ways, but it basically is kind of just a little side aisleway, or hallway rather, that doesn't go very far. That looks like they've been storing supplies and things like that in there, possibly to do things like this, basically to shore up places where cave-ins had happened. The smell of sulfur is really strong. It's starting to get to the point where you have to breathe a little more just to get enough oxygen into your lungs, because of how dense it is down here. But basically you see a bunch of supplies off to the right in this tiny little tunnel, and then you see a massive caved-in spot where there is a very small hole covered in dust. It doesn't look like anybody's come through here for a while. But the kind of cave-in, there's a small hole between a couple of big rocks that there's just barely enough room to be able to fit through, maybe, but probably not for Ketis, and Peter would have to struggle a little bit to get through.
Can I take a moment and throw Toki through the hole so he could take a look at some supplies and see if there's anything we could use, like a pickaxe or anything?
The supplies are actually on your side. The supplies are right before the cave-in. You can still put Toki through if you'd like to be able to see the other side. The other side is where you went through and then got blown up, as far as your last loop. But yeah, the supplies are actually the kind of offset little hallway is off to the right just before this cave-in.
What do you think, guys? I'll send Toki through, and then maybe you guys check out the supplies, if there's anything we could use.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. For Ketis and Nevar, you guys are looking through like the barrels and all the supplies. They're going to roll investigations on those. For Peter, so Toki, you set him through, and he can actually see decently in the dark anyways, so you could actually send one of the orbs with him too. He can't see in perfect darkness, but with enough light coming through this, he has decent dark vision. You see...
Yeah, I'll send that extra orb through
with him? Okay. So he doesn't even have to scrimp down or anything, but he hops up onto the rock, basically, the small hole where there's enough space. You notice that his paw prints do lift up the dirt that's sitting on those rocks, and you see these little cat prints on the rocks as he kind of slides his way through. this otherwise undisturbed dust on these rocks. But he hops through. You're kind of leaning against the wall just to keep yourself from falling over or anything, and your eyes go white, but you're seeing through his. And he hops on down to the other side. Other side of there, that looks like the path actually goes on straight for a little ways before kind of veering off to the right in kind of a curve. Like maybe the stone in this mountain, they were kind of carving through a specific vein, and maybe they were following it along. Otherwise, you wouldn't normally have a curve like this. But it seems to curve off in a little ways, but only probably 30 feet or so from this cave-in. Sure enough, you know, using him and looking through his eyes, you do see that there is almost a chain of disturbed ground, and it looks like it was disturbed quite some time ago. It doesn't look like it was recently dug up or anything like that, but old dirt basically that has been. You see a spot where something was obviously buried under the ground, and this is along the side of the right side of this aisleway. There's this kind of hallway here, so just on the ground against the wall. And you see a spot of disturbed dirt, and then a thin kind of chain, or thin, more disturbed dirt where it looks like somebody basically like maybe a fuse or something like Peter had described already, had buried that, and then just kind of a thin one that goes off for let's say 5 feet or so, and then another kind of bigger hole that's about the size of maybe a volleyball. Or a basketball of disturbed earth, and then on and on and on, and you see at least 5 of those before it kind of goes around the corner so much that the Toki doesn't see it anymore. That would have been a perception anyways, Peter, but it doesn't matter. The rolls would have been good just because of your modifiers. Kiedis and Nivara, looking through those, the barrels don't seem to contain much that seems to be of use. It looks like there's probably, or it looks like there's some old salted meats in here. There's old salted fish that really smells awful as soon as you open the lid. Like this might have been, a simple supply station for food and that kind of thing that they maybe were throwing into, a cart and carrying it further in, that kind of stuff. But beside that, though, there is a mattock there, which is like a pickaxe with a sharp side on one side that's intended for being able to yank rocks around. They were probably intending, to clear out this cave-in or something to that effect, but maybe they just didn't get to it. And basically, there's a big mattock there. It's very heavy. Looks like it's obviously intended specifically for moving very big rocks. You do see a shovel there. In fact, that shovel, Peter isn't looking at it, but let's just say that it would look familiar if he did. Look real familiar, like the kind that you got a real up-close view of at a recent point. No blood on it or anything because it hasn't happened this time, but very familiar looking shovel. But basically the kind of implements you'd expect to see down here, there isn't much that stands out beyond that, except there is sitting just inside of a small box that's sitting on top of one of the barrels. When you open this box, you see what looks at first in the kind of dim light that these orbs that are floating above your head are giving off. You see what at first looks like a bunch of grapes. It looks like if somebody was to make think of it like plastic fruit, how somebody might have a bowl of plastic grapes on like a table centerpiece kind of a thing, except they don't look quite like grapes in that they're a dull brownish color, but it's basically a bunch of these small grape-size ceramic balls that are tied together with this kind of thin cord, and it's just sitting in a box of hay, like old hay. What are you guys doing?
Bring that if they want to use it.
Yep.
You're going to take that with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Peter, what are you doing with Toki?
I'm going to pull him back. I used him as recon, so he's all set. And then I'm going to meet up with the rest of the team.
Okay. Nivara, roll a sleight of hand check, please.
Don't make me blow myself up.
No, you're fine. Okay. So you lift this thing up exceptionally carefully because you kind of intuited that what this might be, especially smelling the sulfur in the air and what Peter told you about being blown up. You're kind of aware that there might be some volatile materials down here. So you really carefully lift it up. You notice that as soon as you do, a bunch of the ceramic balls kind of rattle together because they're all hanging off of one bunch of this fuse or whatever this cord is. It looks kind of fuse-like. and you're kind of careful not to let them shatter. You don't know necessarily that if they did shatter that they would actually cause an explosion, but you're just being really, really careful with it. But when you lift it out, you notice that the cord is there's a long cord inside of here. At first you didn't notice it because it was actually wrapped underneath all the hay, but as you're pulling this thing away, there's this really long cord coming off the top of this. So basically you got a rope that's a thin rope that's maybe 15 feet long, and then a bunch of grapes on the other end of it, and that's what you're holding. You gonna throw the whole thing in your bag?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's densely packed collection of these small ceramic balls, just that kind of look like this, but that long tether is probably intended to, give you some time to run, maybe before it blows up, that kind of thing. So you guys are all kind of gathered together. Toki has now come back and has hopped up on Peter's shoulder, and you are standing in front of a collapsed tunnel there. So what are you guys doing?
Everything kind of looked okay when Toki went in. Obviously, we can go in and be careful if you guys want to check that out.
We can break down a little bit more with the. Well, I don't know if we're strong enough to lift up the pickaxe thing, but either way, maybe I can fit through too. Is that possible?
Anything's possible. It's a matter of how well you roll and if you got good enough ideas.
I guess just breaking it out a little bit more. Am I strong enough to pick up? I can't remember what you called it, but the pickaxe. But
Yeah, Matic. Yeah. Yeah, you could, all three of you could pick it up. It's just a matter of whether or not, swinging it would be viable or not, that kind of thing. It's not something you're not minor, so you're not necessarily used to the kind of swings necessary for it. But basically how this thing looks, think of it like a pickaxe where one end of it is a point, like a sharp point that would be used for breaking rocks apart. Where you swing it and try to shatter a rock into smaller pieces, and the other end of it is like a wedge, almost like a shovel but upside down, where it would be intended to swing it in behind a rock and then yank it and pull it towards you, which would pull the rock towards you. So it's got kind of almost a blade on one side of it. Not great for a weapon, but it's intended for moving rocks around. But yeah, basically you already have a hole that is small enough. That's the one that Toki jumped through, that Peter kind of carefully made his way through during the earthquake, and could have gotten himself squished on the previous loop. But yeah, so I mean, you're able to lift this thing up just fine. You can swing it just fine. What are you trying to do? You're going to try to just move some of the rocks out of the way?
Yeah, move a little bit more, see if I can get enough to get myself to where I can fit through as well too.
Okay. Roll a flat intelligence check. You swing it at first, not being necessarily familiar with, geology. You swing it at first and kind of using the pick side, end up kind of trying to hit the base rock, essentially, the one that's at the bottom of the hole, and slam into it, and there's a loud clinking sound. You hear just this kind of careful rumble, and you're just still for a minute, afraid that the whole thing is just going to collapse in on you. But it doesn't shatter the rock. You end up basically, you kind of tried to stab the rock at the bottom of the hole that Toki just jumped on to slide through. It didn't really do much. You kind of are looking for where might be a good spot on how you should hit this, and it doesn't seem like you found that. It doesn't seem like that was the right way to hit it. So what are you trying?
Can I see if I can, instead of breaking a rock, use the other side and see if I can just move one out of the way, if there's one that's loose enough?
Sure. Roll we'll call it an athletics check. You're just gonna roll shitty all night? So you stand off to one side and kind of with a wide sideways arc, just bring the flat end around and just try to slam it in on the other end of this kind of base rock, to chip into the side of it, to try to get the matic around it, and you swing it and it hits hard. I mean, you definitely put a lot of force behind this, but there's just so much buildup and it's been sitting there for quite a while, obviously, that you hit it, but it just didn't sink in. Go ahead and try another one, assuming you're going to swing again.
Yeah. Athletics again?
Yeah.
Wow.
You try to bring it and hit it in the exact same spot. Yeah, definitely. This needs to go in dice jail. You bring it into the exact same spot, and you swung it just with all your might, and it really shows, because as the kind of spade end, the flat end of this thing goes to sink into the rock, it does exactly that. The head sinks right in, but unfortunately the handle doesn't stop, and the handle breaks right off the thing, and you end up smacking the rock with this wooden handle. And like when you hit something hard with a baseball bat, how you have that kind of rattling in your hand, the mattock is completely toast. You've now got the head of the mattock stuck into the side of this rock, and you're just holding this vibrating piece of wood in your hands. Look, feeling very silly.
All right, well then I guess I'm waiting this one out then. Me and Toki will hang out.
Yeah, maybe.
You guys can go there.
Well, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't get through. You just may need to, either roll better or find another way through.
You try the shovel.
Somebody else can try it.
But maybe somebody that can roll better can try it.
I'll hit it one next time, and it'll come back and it'll hit me in the head, knock me out or something. So.
Well, without, I
Get
mean,
killed.
not to, I'm not going to give you guys suggestions on what to do, but I mean, Nivara does have creative means of getting through this thing too. So there's tons of ways to get through here that aren't just pull rocks. Pull rocks would have worked fine had you rolled better, but
Tipping things on me. I don't know if that works.
Well, I can't turn you. Well, no, actually, I might be able to. Hang on.
Well, I mean, there's plenty of things that you can do anyway that you could use to move those rocks without any difficulty, and then the rocks would be able to would be gone basically, and somebody could get through.
This pile of rocks, do we know an approximate weight of these rocks? Like, how big are they?
Roll. Let's see. Roll, and I would say, yeah, you know what? Roll an investigation check, because I'll let you use your proficiency and everything for it. I was going to say just a flat intelligence, but I mean you'd have some some familiarity with that for working in demo. Total, it's probably about 1,200 pounds of rocks total, but they're not. It's not one big rock. It's a bunch of smaller ones, of course, about the size of. The largest, which is the base one, the one that that Toki just jumped over, is probably the biggest and the heaviest one, and that is probably about 3 foot in diameter. It's not a perfectly round shape, but at its widest point, probably 3 foot in diameter. But yeah, I mean, you with that roll, you definitely have a good idea of how heavy the things are.
You guys want to try using that possible bomb thing to open up the door, but we got the risk of triggering secondaries.
We can try.
Actually, before we use that thing, it's still kind of a weird mystery type of stuff. Can I take an investigation, see if there's any arcane properties to it?
Sure, that would be an Arcana check. So roll an Arcana check.
Want to is since I don't think we're going to be getting in any fights anyway, I can use my investiture of stone if I need to, because then I can move through earth. So if I have to get through.
That lets you move through Earth.
Than earth, but I can move through it.
That is an
Turn
overpowered
rock
spell.
into mud.
Yeah, that thing is way overpowered.
Yeah,
Okay.
druids in general have tons and tons of things that would be useful for this kind of thing. With that Arcana check, Peter, looking over it, you don't sense any nearby, because you rolled a natural 20. Nearby, like close by you, you don't sense anything. But when you do notice that as soon as you reached out, that there is something incredibly magically powerful. So much so that there's only been 2 instances in your life that you remember feeling something this powerful close by, and it's very close. It's definitely in here. You feel something extremely magically powerful in here, so much so that even though this kind of just a dull sense of reaching out for the magical rill, you wouldn't necessarily notice something that was even super powerful if it was a little further away. But this thing is so crazy powerful that it's radiating an aura that is filling this entire tunnel. So while there's nothing close by you, like within, certainly not in this collapsed portion of the tunnel that's magical, what it is that is so close is so powerful that you can still feel it, even though it's not directly within reach or anything. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
As for how you guys want to get through, I mean, it sounds like you've got a few options that you're aware of. So what do you want to do?
I still didn't hear what you said, honey. What was your idea?
Oh, I can transmute stone into mud.
Oh, okay.
Or 40-foot square or cube.
Should be enough for us to get through.
Yeah, you don't need 40 feet to get there for sure. You can do that on a smaller scale too, right? It doesn't just do 40 feet.
No, it just has to fit within 40 feet.
Is that transmute rock that you're looking at?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me read it real quick. You choose an area of stone or mud that you can see that fits within a 40-foot cube and is within range, and choose one of the following effects. This is the one you want to do, is transmute rock to mud.
Yeah.
Okay. Non-magical rock of any sort in the area becomes an equal volume of thick, flowing mud that remains in the spell's or remains for the spell's duration. The ground in the spell's area becomes muddy enough that each creature can sink into it. Each foot that a creature moves through the mud costs 4 feet of movement. Any creature on the ground must, when you cast a spell, must make a strength saving throw. That doesn't matter because you presumably don't have any creatures in there while you cast it. So we will skip that part. Yeah, we don't need to worry about that. If you cast the spell on a ceiling, the mud falls. Any creature under the mud when it falls must make a dex saving throw. Also doesn't matter. Yeah, so it doesn't seem like there's... Basically, you should be able to do this with no risk, and as long as you don't try to stand in it, then you're not going to have like the quicksand of the 80s movies where you're kind of sinking into it, and you guys should be okay. Is that what you're going to do?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so it mentioned for the duration. Well, the duration is until dispelled, meaning that if you cast this, presumably till the end of the loop at least, this is always a muddy spot in the middle of an otherwise rocky mine here. So that's interesting. All right, so you kind of lean yourself back and you kind of motion for Peter and Ketis to get behind you, and you close your eyes and you have this kind of dull, kind of greenish glow coming around you, and you're just trying to pull as much of the moisture that is off of these walls with the humidity in here into this kind of small dense spot in front of you, and focus all of this energy into this collapsed portion where all these heavy rocks are, and you're not seeing this. I mean, you're kind of seeing it a little bit in your mind, but this is more you just kind of imagining what's occurring and kind of forcing your will on it. But Peter and Keita standing back, though, you see that the rocks begin to look almost like they were in a microwave, like if if this was cheese or something in the microwave that is beginning to slowly melt, and they kind of begin to just sift down, and you see bits of it start to break off, a little chunk here and there where small parts of it just kind of fall off, and as soon as they hit the ground they splash, and kind of this whole thing begins to just kind of slowly cave down until until it's slowly seeping towards you along the floor like a pool of blood, and your feet, your boots are starting to get sticky with this as it's starting to fill up because there's just so much mass, and you didn't get far enough back that this isn't going to get your shoes all muddy. But sure enough, 30 seconds later, this pathway is wide open. You can see straight through. Toki is mewling a little bit on your shoulder because he was just walking through that, and all of a sudden it's not there anymore, Peter. But other than that, this is a wide open path. Navarre, you open your eyes, you see exactly what you had imagined, is that now there's just a massive mud puddle where once had been a doorway filled with rock. What are you guys doing?
Well, I'm going to trudge through and just kind of be careful with it.
Okay. Yeah, as long as you guys are moving carefully through it, no dex checks or anything like that needed. You just, you're walking through a thick mud puddle, that's all. But you kind of make your way through that, and sure enough, as soon as you get to the other side, you see exactly what Peter was describing to you before. All three of you see this now. There is essentially a chain of these buried, something buried along this kind of row that moves around this curved walkway that's curving off to the right a little ways, where against the wall is a spot of disturbed dirt where something was buried, and then a thinner kind of channel that moves off a few feet, and then another spot of disturbed earth, and it keeps going around this corner. You just following along?
I'd like to take 1 second, if possible, to inspect, now that I have time, inspect one of these squares and that fuse. I want to see if I can trigger it with fire or trigger it with magic, or how does it work?
Okay, so I described it as squares initially because I was giving you kind of an idea of the space, but they're really probably more spherical as far as the shape of it, whereas the surface is probably about a foot and a half maybe. Let's call it probably 18 inches there of disturbed earth, but they're not boxes necessarily. They're just kind of a small mound where the dirt looks different than the rest of the floor does. Whereas the floor, like I described earlier, had been trampled and smoothed. This spot is obviously something was buried here. I guess be specific. What is it exactly that you're trying to do?
First things first, I want to see, maybe unearth a little bit carefully one of them, just to see if it's the same type of sphere that we're carrying right now, and then also see if I know how to trigger this thing, as if, set it on fire or electric, whatever it is. Okay.
So you're not actually trying to trigger it, you're just trying to see if you can get an idea of how you would trigger it, like what the triggering mechanism might be?
Correct.
Okay. It is buried, so you're going to try to carefully move some of the dirt away with your hand?
Yeah, just a mage's hand and just slightly brush away the dirt until
Okay.
we get to it.
All right. Roll a sleight of hand. We'll use this as the mage hand, but yeah. Okay. Yeah, you kind of send the mage hand out, and you're kind of just instinctively holding your own hand like up in front of your eyes in case this thing does go off, as if you being blinded for the half second before you're just obliterated would really matter. But you're just kind of just being really cautious with this, and you kind of are using this translucent hand to just kind of scoop away a little bit of the dirt, just very very carefully. And sure enough, as soon as you've scooped away just a little bit of it, you can see that this hole, which is the one that was removed before, the one that was empty before, and dug out, you do see what looks very much like that same kind of bundle of grapes that Naivara threw in her bag, and you can see it's buried there, and there's a line coming off of it that is going underneath the ground, which is presumably that channel, that thin channel that's going between all of these. That's there. You don't see any kind of a triggering mechanism or anything else, but you do see what could be just something you've been familiar with demo. You see what you would have intuited as being some kind of a fuse, like a buried fuse that's going between these.
Copy that. So there must be a detonator of some sort somewhere down there. So Navarra, you're definitely carrying some explosives, right?
Yeah.
You do remember too, by the way, that when you were running, you ran past this one and started kind of running down this curved archway, or this curved tunnel, and you heard Hetty's voice from the far end of it say something about knowing you were a Gerblin, and then you heard a click, and then it went boom, and that was further down the tunnel. And that, I mean, you didn't see anything, you just heard her say that from down the tunnel right before the explosion went off.
Right. So from that, I can assume it was either her pressing down on a detonator plunge or possibly a trap. So keep that in mind.
So what are you guys doing?
Does anybody have anything that can detect possible traps or tripwires or pressure plates or something?
Am I?
It'd be really cool when you have 300 fucking spells in a list. There ought to be a like search field in your character sheet so that you can like search through all these freaking spells.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I'll send it in as a suggestion. So because Fantasy Grounds is constantly under development, and they're still working on the Unity version, which will have all the animated effects I was telling you guys about, like the weather effects and that kind of thing.
Found it. Find traps.
What level is that? Oh, did you mark off your Mud to Earth?
2.
Did you mark off your
Yeah.
or transmute? Okay, level 2. You're burning
Yeah.
through your spells pretty quick. All right, let's
I
see.
know.
2 is find traps. There it is. That one is one action, VS. You sense presence of any trap within range that is within line of sight. A trap for the purpose of this spell includes anything that would inflict a sudden or unexpected effect you consider harmful or undesirable, which was specifically intended as such by its creator. Thus, the spell would sense an area affected by the alarm spell, a glyph of warding, or a mechanical pit trap, but would not reveal a natural weakness in the floor, or an unstable ceiling, or a hidden sinkhole. The spell merely reveals that the trap is present. You don't learn the location of each trap, but you do learn the general nature of the danger posed by the trap you sense. So, you go ahead and mark off your spell slot there. Who's phone? You guys need a second?
Done.
Yeah, actually, hang on.
Alright.
Reach it.
We can fill Ben in when he gets back. No big deal. This is fine. So you close your eyes and kind of reach out, sensing for this, trying to feel if there's any anything in here that would be intending to harm you, as that is described. You don't feel anything close by. What was the range on that? 120. Let's see.
Yeah, 120 feet.
You definitely feel absolutely no question about it. There is something up ahead and close by, but you don't sense it along this chain of these nearby explosives that are close by you. But no question, there is absolutely. In fact, there are multiple traps that feel like it's around where this tunnel is aiming. So there's this. You're kind of in a curved tunnel, right? And that curve, you feel. Absolutely, there are for sure traps up ahead around where this curve goes, and it seems like around the end of where this curve would lead to, there are traps there. But it does not feel like these are trapped beyond being explosives or anything like that. You don't really sense anything from them other than just knowing that they're explosives.
Alright. I guess just let everybody know what I sense. Tell them to be careful.
Okay.
Say let's move up to right around the bend and take a look and see what's going on over the bend, and obviously look for traps if possible.
Sure. It is a continuous bend that's going around. Time-wise, we are looking at about we're taking longer to go through this than is actually happening narratively. So you guys are looking at probably about 11:42 right now. But you come up around this curve, and it kind of continues actually for a while. So it's not just you come up to the end and then turn right and you can see. It actually still continues to curve for quite a ways, and it almost feels like it's spiraling, and maybe a little bit. It's not much, but maybe it's going down a little bit, like you're going kind of like think of it like a spiral staircase, but it's just a real slow grade of moving down. So much so that it's not necessarily easily detectable that it's moving down so well. Ben, are you back? Okay, all right. So basically, Nivara sensed traps. There are some traps up ahead for sure, but it does not seem like this row of explosives are trapped. But there are definitely some very dangerous traps up ahead of the explosive variety. So anyways, this curvature continues for a ways, and you guys are just walking carefully alongside where all these explosives are buried? Is that what you're doing?
I mean, just following Lara.
Okay. All right, so you make your way around. This big curved tunnel leads off into. You can see that the light kind of starting to slowly illuminate this room up ahead. Just a big entry room of some kind. And as you get a little bit closer, it starts to look more like you see tables in there with benches on either side. And you kind of finally come up towards the main, where this tunnel actually opens up into this room, and you come into this big room. The series of explosives that are planted in the ground have stopped just before the end of this, so you don't see any more. It's possible that they're still there, but you don't see any more recently disturbed Earth where a series of these had been buried. It looks like that chain has stopped, and you're now in this big room. Or the entrance of it rather. It looks like an entry room or something, but now that you're in a little ways and the orbs above your head are illuminating this room, you can see it looks kind of like a break room almost. In one corner there is a sink and an ice box. You see 4 tables, these kind of bench style tables, round with benches on one side, chairs on the other. A few of the chairs have been upended, like they've been set up either on top of the table or just fallen over and just haven't been fixed. Right next to the entrance that you guys are coming in through, they're basically to the wall, or on the wall close by. You see a bunch of boxes that are hanging on the wall with small pieces of what look like a stiff paper, like a cardstock kind of a paper in them, and a little mechanical box next to it, and it says time on the box, TIME. On the small box next to these kind of wall hangers with the cards in them. There's about 15 of the, sorry, I thought they were cardstock. They're not. They're actually steel. So the cards that are in the boxes, they look about 6 inches across 6 inches tall rather, by maybe 3 or 4 inches across. And they're just little like steel punch cards almost is what they look like with that box next to it that says time on it. The far side of the room, opposite from you, of the way that you've come in, there's this giant, just massive, heavy metal door. It looks like a industrial style vault kind of a door, almost not round though. It's a big square door. To your right, past these tables and chairs, there are 2 rows of lockers, and you see that there's a little piece of tape on the front of each one. Looks like there's some writing on those. But that's it basically. You're in this giant break room. You see what looks like probably some kind of a time clock with those steel punch cards, and a giant door and some tables and that kind of thing. So what are you guys doing?
Well, just go see behind the door, or do you want to guys check the room out, or do you guys want to check the room out more?
Just real fast, if I cast the detect magic, how long does that take? Just a minute or 2 or a few seconds?
Depends on how you're casting. Are you going to use a spell slot and cast it as an action? Because I think you can do it as a ritual, can't you?
I think it's just a concentration, regular.
Detect magic. It is ritualable, so you could cast it as a ritual. It would take you 10 minutes to do so. But otherwise, it's concentration, 1 action. Yes. So it would take you 6 seconds to cast if you just use a spell slot.
I'm just going to use a spell slot then, see if I can detect magic just in a large sphere, see if there's any magical items or magical things in this room.
Okay. Go ahead and mark off your spell slot. It's just a level 1. You close your eyes and kind of through them like that shitty Daredevil movie where you're kind of sensing auras around you. You're reaching out trying to feel anything close by, but almost as soon as you close your eyes and finish the incantation, you are blinded so much that whatever it is that you sensed with the kind of magical rill that it was nearby is blowing out everything else around here. It'd be like if you're trying to look at a candle, the light from a candle when you have like a floodlight right in front of your face. You can't even sense that the candle is there because the floodlight is too bright. That being said, close by you don't feel anything. It's just that, like, you can definitely tell for sure that there's nothing magical nearby you. It's just that this overwhelming sense of power is so close by that if you were to get right next to it, let's say, you wouldn't be able to detect anything close because of how much it would be blowing out. But you're sure that there's nothing in this room, within the close vicinity or anything that is magical.
Gotcha. Getting the magic overload, pretty much.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, you guys have a lot of things on you that as you're looking around, you can still see those kind of dull glows from the equipment that you guys are carrying. You do sense them on the bracers you're wearing, all that stuff. But there's nothing that you aren't already aware of in this room that has any kind of a magical glow, except for this just huge source of it that is further in and down below, like quite a ways down below in this quarry.
What do you say we take a minute just to kind of carefully rummage through things? Obviously, try not to set off any traps or anything.
You're at about 11:43 right now.
Sure.
I didn't hear you, G. What was that?
If you guys want to do, we can check it out more.
I think time's getting kind of tight. Maybe just like a quick 2 minutes just to get it to 45, but carefully for traps.
At 45, you do know that the bank gets robbed. That's where that explosion happens above. In fact, actually, Peter was down here when that went off before. I think that was while you were actually inside of when you're trying to climb through that small hole that Navarra melted. That was when you were here before. So you guys going to look around?
Actually, that explosion might cause a cave-in or something. What do you think? Just
It didn't when you were here before. You were actually in the spot that had that roll gone a little worse, you would have gotten trapped there. But you were inside, basically midsection, in the middle of that tiny hole, and you still were able to get through, meaning it didn't cause any significant cave in there. That blast of them blowing up the bank vault, it wasn't big enough to cause any major damage down here. There was a small shake, but nothing severe.
up to you guys. What do you think?
Look and then go, or what?
Well, the door across from you guys is closed. The giant industrial door, it's closed anyways. So
We're gonna have to go out the other way anyway.
All right, I guess what I'll do super quick is I'll just see if there's a trap on the door. Try and open the door, see if it's locked.
I won't even make you roll for it because you can actually see from here that the door is locked. You can just see where there's massive chunks of steel, essentially, almost like when you bar a door with a 2x4 kind of thing, almost like that. You see these slide locks, like giant deadbolts, basically, that are slid into the wall that would prevent this door from being able to open.
All right, and it's nothing that we can actually pull away, or is it locked in?
It's inside the door. There is definitely a locking mechanism there, so if you can get the door unlocked, the door would slide open. You'd be able to go right through. So are you guys going to look around in the room a bit?
Yeah, I guess we have to look around, see if there's an opening.
All right, whoever.
Can open it.
Okay, whoever's going to be looking around, roll an investigation check. You all three can if you want. It's up to you.
All three, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, whoever wants to investigate. Peter's saving the day with that 9 roll in his, or 9 modifier for his proficiency. So looking around, I guess who's looking at what, and we'll use those rolls.
I used to check out the locker.
Okay, Navarro looking at the lockers. You looking at the names on the lockers. Each of them has a piece of tape, like just masking tape, essentially, that is taped to the front of them. You see that there are 2 banks of 13. There's 13 on the top, 13 on the bottom, and they all have names scribbled on them. One of the names is scratched off, but basically all the names are written there. Here's the names. Peter, what are you looking at?
I'm gonna start investigating that time clock. Maybe like along the walls, see if there's any switches or anything like that.
Okay. You see the time clock or the cards that are there. There are 13 big steel cards that are still in there. And then there's a time clock next to it. And you pull one out and you look at the name. You see Morrison. There's a name Morrison at the top of one of these that is just scribbled on there and kind of hastily thrown on. Looks like maybe they were trading out names relatively often, like it had been a different name, and then they'd wiped it off and wrote Morrison there instead. But these steel punch cards are they have spots on them where ink is kind of punched in and then can be wiped away. Where paper wouldn't necessarily allow that. But yeah, basically you see that they take these cards out and feed them into this machine. It punches a thing on it, and then they put it back in the slot. Kind of an old style version of a time card. That's what you're seeing. What's Keita's looking at?
Excuse me. Did we already figure out exactly how the locks work on the door? Can I check it out further?
Sure.
Like, are they just in, how they're held in place or whatever?
So, looking at it, you see, since when you guys were kind of walking around the curve there, and Nivara had sensed that there was a trap up ahead, looking at the door, you kind of had an idea of what to look for. Your rolls weren't great, but because she had given you kind of an idea of what to look for, yours was a little bit better anyway. You see that there is a thread, for lack of a better term, similar to the fuses that you saw on the bundle of grapes that Navarro's carrying. You see a thread that is wrapped around the inside of one of the slide bolts, one of the like deadlock or what's the word I'm looking for, deadbolts, and it goes. It's wrapped around it, and it's inside. You can't really get to where that thread goes, and the thread is fed back out from somewhere, and it's going to the other side of the door. So you see the triggering mechanism to this trap that you're presuming anyway, based on what Nivara had sensed in here, is fed through the other side of the door, where you can't get to it. You can just barely see it. And actually, Peter, with that roll, because you rolled pretty well, with your modifier pretty well, you do notice that looking down, as you're kind of looking at this time clock, you see that you're kind of looking around and just basic, trying to figure out what this might be or how this might be set up as far as what this trap could, or how this trap could function. You don't see a lot of foot traffic in the dirt, because you noticed it earlier when you were walking through this place, how the place had kind of been stomped down. Well, this room doesn't seem like it had gotten a lot of traffic, but there is certainly more recent traffic that is going back and forth between all those lockers. So there's a bunch of arcs where somebody has walked to this locker, and then over here to this one, and then over here to this one, and then over here to this one, and you can just see them going kind of back and forth a ways. And then that's the back and forth kind of runs over towards the door, and then continues presumably through the door.
Gotcha. All right, I'll take a quick second just to let the team know kind of what I noticed about that.
Okay.
And if possible, I know this sounds weird, but I'm going to give it a shot. Can I grab the time card with the smudged stuff on it?
Mm-hmm.
You can't read it. I'm going to use a prestidigitation and soil one of the cards and scribble my name on one of the time cards.
Okay. On the one that's scratched off?
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
go ahead.
And I was thinking of just punching in.
Sure. So you clean off what was already there, and kind of with a minor incantation, just a small script, and put your name on it. You pop it in there, and you hear a click sound inside of the time clock, and pull it out, and sure enough you see a spot of wet ink that is now on the steel there, and it looks like it's recording you can't quite read the time, just because it seems like maybe this machine hasn't been used in some time, maybe hasn't been maintained, and it just put out a big ink blot where it's supposed to probably have been a date and time that it was stamped. And maybe if it had been used recently, it wouldn't have all this kind of built-up ink. But basically, there's a little ink blot that you guess is probably supposed to be the date and time. It just looks like a big kind of ball of ink that's landed on there.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I guess I'll just kind of walk over towards the lockers then.
Okay. We are getting close. It's about 11:44. You guys expect that you're going to hear an explosion any second now. But you walk over to lockers. Navarro's looking over them. The names that I just sent over there. You see those. You know what? I'm sorry. There wasn't a time card that had a scratched off one, but you grabbed one of the time cards that was there. Let's just say that you grabbed Morrison's time card, erased his name and put your name on it, and did that. But as far as the label that was scratched off, that's one of the lockers that's scratched off. So the names that I put in there, those are all the names that are on the locker. There's only, I think it was 13 time cards there that have names that also match up to some of, because it's not all the same names, but they match up to some of the names that are on the lockers.
What do you think, guys?
Should we just keep looking down here and try to do more on the next cycle, or should we get up and see what we can find out in town? You know, because it's still going to take us a minute to get out of here. You know, it's going to happen any minute now anyway. So
No. So the bank robbery is going to happen any minute. You still have 15 minutes before the town falls in. You still got plenty of time. You're fine. I was just keeping you appraised of what time it was up top. That's all.
Shows some recent activity between the time cards and the lockers. I could probably kind of.
That's actually so that's what I was trying to describe. There isn't any recent activity as far as what you saw on the floor. Okay, so I'll put it this way: you saw. Because familiarity with tracking someone, you knew what Hetty's footprints looked like because you had seen her footprints when you were running through here before and chasing after her, and you see footprints that, let's say, match hers pretty closely, that go back and forth between all the lockers. It doesn't go anywhere near the time cards. The only place that you see common foot traffic back and forth between the lockers a bunch, basically those same footprints that are there a lot, which would be a little bit strange because let's just say that she has one locker, she'd probably only go to her own and then she'd walk through the door, and you can piece that together, of course, because that's what people would do in a break room, right? They don't necessarily go back and forth between other people's lockers, but you do see her footprints all over the place in front of all those banks of lockers and then go through the door. That's what you're seeing. And actually, roll another investigation on Navarra, because she's been looking at these for a little while. And roll good, so that you don't blow up.
Okay.
That's enough. Looking over these, you do see that where all of these are on there, and you see the kind of scratched out piece of tape and everything, the tape doesn't look like it's been there forever either. The tape looks like a somewhat recent addition.
I guess try to open that one.
They all do. That's all. The tape looks new. Well, not new, but not old. It has. This whole place has, is very old. It's obviously been used for a very long time. The tape doesn't look like it's been here for that long. Maybe a year. You know how tape or paper starts to get that kind of aged look? It doesn't have that yet, whereas everything else in here seems to. You trying to remove any particular one?
I guess the one that's been scratched out.
Okay. You peel that one off, and there is not a name behind it. There's nothing like that. Basically, that tape was thrown on there, and a name was on it, and has been stricken through so much that you can't read the name below it. But they're basically, the tape was thrown on the top of this thing, and a name had been written on it and then scratched off.
If I'm standing in front of the lockers, can I do a quick thing?
Yeah, you do, by the way, as this was happening, you do hear a very distant boom, and there is the kind of slightest shift under here, down this far. You see little rivulets of dust start to kind of fall off where loose rocks and everything are kind of rattled loose. Nothing major, doesn't appear to have caused any major damage, but you do sense that there was an explosion of some kind on the surface. What are you doing, Peter?
These lockers, I assume they're like normal lockers with little vents in them. Can I see inside the vent if I were to move one of my orbs just underneath it, just to look inside each of these lockers?
Sure. Roll an investigation. Yeah, that proficiency is just saving you. I mean, you're getting some great rolls, but even your shit rolls are still good enough because of it. You have to lean down because the lockers aren't very tall. They're only probably 2.5 feet tall each, and there's 2 rows of 13. There's 13 on the bottom and then another 13 stacked on top for a total of 26 of them. And you kind of lean down to be able to look up through these vents because the vents are kind of facing down. You look up through them. You don't see anything at first, but after kind of moving left to right a little bit, you start to make out that it looks like there is a thin thread inside the first one hanging down from the top of this locker. So you move over to the next one, you look in, and sure enough, there's another thread that's hanging down. And you look to the next, and same thing. You see a series of these. It looks like all of them, everyone that you've checked, has a thin thread hanging from the top, almost like something is hanging inside each locker. Otherwise, you don't see anything in there. They look empty, which is in itself somewhat abnormal.
I think those might be triggers. I'll let the team know what I see, of course.
Okay. You continue looking with that roll. That's enough. You do notice that there are, because at first you look through 3 and then 4, and each of those so far had seen one, and then you come across the locker that is labeled. Which one is it? Abernathy. You see, Abernathy does not appear to have a thread in it. Which was strange. So you continue, you kind of move along and kind of keep looking. And then you come across Dana's locker and you see that there's no thread in there. You notice that Morrison's locker, no thread in there. Basically, a few of these, you after you're looking through all of them, you find 6 of them. Out of the 26 total lockers, you find 6 that are not threaded. There's no thread inside of.
What do you think, guys? Open those 6?
Yeah.
The 6 that you find, hang on a sec. I'll put them all in here for you. Randall, Dana, Morrison, Isaac. You do recognize some of these names from people in the town too, by the way. Maybe they worked in the mine previously or something to that effect. And then the scratched off one. There, those are the ones that you see that don't have threads in them. Peter, roll a flat wisdom check for me. You, for some reason, are thinking over this and just remembering that you were chasing Hetty through here, and you're pretty sure that these are Hetty's footprints all over the place. You're pretty sure that she's the one that has rigged this place with this trap. And for some reason, you're kind of thinking over all the conversations. Not that you had a ton, but the conversations that you heard with Hetty, and you, for some reason, it's sticking out in your mind that she was always very insistent. She said it a few times that everyone always tells her she's got a head full of rocks and that she's dumb, and nobody believes anything she says, but she tells you she sure as shit is not dumb, and she's very smart, and she knows how to blow these up and get diamonds. For some reason, it's sticking out to you that she's a lot more clever than people believe her to be.
What do you think, guys?
And remember, these lockers look like these names were added more recently on this tape. They may have had labels at one point, maybe they didn't, but this tape was thrown on top of there recently.
All the ones that don't have strings. Are those ones that names look new like?
The names that I just put in there: Abernathy, Randall, Dana, Morrison, Isaac, and then the one that was scratched off. Those are the ones that don't have strings.
The ones that seem like they're new written in, mostly, or newer written in.
All of them are written in with all of them. Every single one is written in with new tape.
Okay.
Yeah.
there's nothing behind the tape. So the Abernathy, Randall, Dana, Morrison, if we were to pull that tape off the locker, there's no tape underneath it, like she's covering over something.
Correct. You pull all of them off, and there's definitely were labels on some of these before, and some of the handles look like they've seen more use than others and so on, but nothing that stands out. And really, the only thing that stands out is being recent, as in that you've kind of pieced it together that if she was going to rig something, maybe this was something she set up on purpose. Maybe the names weren't there when these were actually in use. Because remember, the mine has sat unused for some time because of all the cave-ins and that kind of thing. Now, keep in mind, too, if you blow yourselves up, and, you know, if the trap goes badly or anything like that, it's not game over. It just means we just restart right here. So you guys can try everything you want to. Don't feel like, you know, you only get one shot. If I'll put it this way, you don't have an unlimited number, because every time you've gone back to that white space and another loop has started, this only being the third one, each time you've gone back, the old woman that's there leaning on the spear looks a little more tired every time, is how I'll say that. But that being said, if the difference is, you know, running out the clock each time versus trying something and then maybe making some progress, because you'll know better the next time what not to do, let's say, it might be better for you to just try something, blow up, start over again. We fast forward to this point and you rinse and repeat until you're through. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What I'm thinking is this. If these are brand new names, these are people in the town, these are people that are not in the mine, these are people not mining, why would their names be on this locker? So it's kind of, that's what I'm thinking.
You do know that Isaac is the sheriff. Sheriff Isaac. You know that Abernathy is the owner of the general store.
But they're not miners, so why would their names be on a mining locker? So this might be her trap. What do you think, guys?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying, right? Strings kind of look like a trap, but at the same time, these are without the strings. They wouldn't be down here, so she just set these up. So maybe this is either storage from things she was stealing from these people, or this could be the trap. She just didn't have names to put on a locker.
Roll another... Ketis, by now you've kind of stopped looking at the door and come over to check out these lockers with them. Roll an investigation for the lockers on Ketis. Yeah, that's plenty. Going back and forth as you know, Peter's kind of looking through these slots and identifying which ones you know, don't have strings and kind of jotting down the names on those and everything. You're looking closely at the names on these, and something is really standing out about each name. That there's something unique about each of these names that you guys haven't necessarily picked up on yet. But there's something there, and you're kind of just starting to kind of travel down that mental road, let's say, on Ketis. So looking at each name, what kind of stands out to you after you're looking them over? What feels unique about each one? There are 26 lockers there. 2 banks of 13, rather, 13 and then 13. So a total of 26. And remember, they were added recently. There's some possibility that maybe some of them even aren't even people, necessarily, that live in the town. Hush, Esther. You guys can keep thinking that over. Just remember, you can just try something. It's not gonna cost you much, basically, to just try something. So, you know, you're coming up on about let's call it 11:48 right now. So you've got a little bit longer before the big explosion caves in, which is going to happen anyways, of course. So, you know, if it means standing here for another 12 minutes until it blows up, that's fine too. But you might as well, you know, try something before that happens, so that at least you have, you know, some progress, rather than coming back here and still just, you know, not knowing what to do next.
Shit like this, I'm always stumped on, so I literally have no idea.
You're good. Don't worry about it. Yeah, don't feel like stressed out about it or anything like that. I'm giving you only enough clues that you guys will figure it out on your own. I don't want to tell you the solution, so I want you guys to be able to solve it. But I'm not making it easy for you, is what I'm saying. So don't feel disheartened.
Yeah, eventually I'll get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of these 6 lockers, which one is the rightmost locker?
That would be actually, I put them in order from top left to bottom right, so it would be the one that's scratched off is in the bottom right. Most of those 6, anyways. The actual bottom right one is Nancy. and Terrence is to the left of her, and then the scratched off one.
What do you think, Leroy Jenkins? Scratched off? Try and open it?
Sure.
Because I'm thinking either Isaac or scratched off.
Okay, you're going to open the locker?
You want to have a failure drill just in case? Maybe two of you guys take cover somewhere, so one of us will take the blast, and then you just try the other lockers.
Hey, you want to go hide around the corner and send our mage hands in to do it?
Actually, yeah, let's try that.
Yeah.
Kind of see if there's a place you guys can take cover from the explosives, not only on the hallway, but also possibly a trigger in that room. And then I'll use a mage hand.
Okay. All right, so you guys kind of sneak around the corner a little ways, you know, trying to get yourself just enough around the curve. Unfortunately, the curve is quite a ways back, but it's just barely enough range that you can still hit it with your mage hand. And you're opening the scratched off door?
Yeah, we'll start with a scratched off.
Okay. So you sneak around the corner and you kind of send in this little translucent hand, just kind of feeling for it. In fact, you actually almost need to send Toki in, you know, around the corner to be your eyes, just enough that he can see, and with a little orb over it and everything. You send the hand over, lift the handle on the scratched off locker. Well, that was a shitty boom, but basically that was a boom sound. I didn't get the stupid sound effects set up correctly. But anyway, it lifts up, there's a click, and the whole room in this industrial break room there just erupts with just a cacophonous explosion. All of your ears are immediately ruptured. You're not killed by the blast, but you are incapacitated immediately. In fact, all of you go unconscious, and next thing you know, you wake up in the white space. The town collapsed while you guys were unconscious from the explosion. You guys were enough around the corner that it didn't kill you, but you're still in a very small space, and you know there was probably some cave-ins and so on. That if you did survive through the end of it, the town collapsing on itself would have gotten you anyway. But we will go ahead and fast forward through that. So this time I'll give you some choice if you want to adjust what you did. Remember, during that loop, you woke up by Wallace. Wallace took you into town. You guys went into the jail. Then you went to Mammy's hut. Then you went to the saloon to gamble for some diamonds. Back to Mammy's hut, and then out to the quarry. So did you want to adjust any of that, or do you want to use that same kind of route to get back here?
I'm thinking maybe a slight tweak. What do you think, guys?
Yeah.
If you guys want to do something different,
Okay. What you want to do?
We gotta maintain the whole Manny situation, so I'm thinking we should go to the jail, seal up the wall, and obviously skip going to the fortune teller out there to save some time, and essentially save some time, seal up the wall, and run to the quarry.
Okay. Yeah, you can do all of that if that's what you want to do. All right. That saves you because you've spent, let's call it about 20 minutes or so, which means you've gotten there just about the time that the earthquake is going to happen. In fact, just as you guys are starting to enter the quarry, the kind of cave entrance for the quarry, is when the earthquake goes off in town. Wallace is kind of, you know, he's already rushed in anyways. He didn't go out to the Mammy's hut with you, of course, because you skipped that part of it. But he's in town, and you kind of we'll hand wave past that portion that you guys have kind of escaped enough to get down here. Maybe going straight from the jail, the sheriff's office, because you didn't need to go to the saloon either, because you didn't go back to Mammy's hut. So you've made your way there. It is just at 11:30. You know what? Actually, I'm sorry. It'd be earlier than that, because if you didn't go to the saloon either, we'll call it 11:15. That you're now in the entrance to the quarry. Go ahead.
Do I notice that I still have my first level spell taken off?
You do not. Yeah, you feel like you still have that expenditure.
Okay, I'll unmark that.
No. It's still there. Meaning you did.
my bad.
Yeah, that didn't come back. It seems like the mental capacity that you guys have used is still there. Meaning, eventually, if you were to do this forever, which you would need 24 plus loops, that you don't feel mentally reinvigorated at all. But your physical form seems to return to exactly as it was. The importance of that is that if you burn all your spells, you won't have them. Does that make sense? So you're not getting your spell slots back, is what I'm saying. So basically, you make your way down. You're back now, assuming you went through the same path to get there. You're back in this kind of break room area, looking at these lockers. You know that when you pulled off the scratched off one, it blew up. Now, keep in mind too, you could, if you wanted to, you could, when you blow up next time, maybe go ask Mammy about it, and maybe she can give you an idea of what's going on in here, or maybe what you should do, that kind of thing. But you are back in front of these. You know that you've pulled one of those 6, and it still blew up. But you did notice, by the way, that the back and forth path of foot traffic is going between these 6 lockers for sure. It's going like one to the next, to the next, to the next, and then after through all 6 of them, and then out through the door. And it's happened multiple times.
How many explosives are in the ground as we walk to that room? Are there 6?
As you're walking by, you count them. It looks like there are, let's just 6. 6 is fine. Yeah, you pass 6 of them because the distance-wise would be about right there, since they're about 5 feet apart.
When we blew up last time, did the explosions come from that break room?
Yeah, they came from the break room. They came from the lockers specifically. You had Toki peeking around the corner, and you saw the doors of the lockers explode out. And you did sense that the disarm mechanism is also inside those lockers. Those banks of lockers. Anything from looking over the names? Anything that stands out? Not just those 6, but all of them.
It looks like B, Z. Is each one, the first letter of the name, represent a letter? So are we trying to spell something, and do we have to get it in order? So you have to open the lockers in order to spell something that she wanted to spell without blowing up.
So since you had a little
trying to spell?
time, yeah, Ketis had some time after the explosion and kind of, getting your way back down here and everything to think about what was unique about these names, and sure enough, that is it. You are certain after looking at these that these names don't look like, you recognize some of them as the people in the town, but there are some that you haven't seen out here and aren't necessarily even names that would be native to this area, so it seems a little strange to see somebody like Morrison, for example. That's not the kind of name that would be here. But you, looking over these, yeah, each of those names is a letter, and coupled with Peter being sure that Hetty is a lot cleverer, or more clever rather, than she gets credit for, and these names being new, you get the impression she put these fake names on there maybe to kind of be a trick for herself that she would know, but not necessarily everybody else would be able to instantly figure out. Yeah, you're on the right track, G. You figured it out.
I'm trying to think, what would Hetty be wanting to spell, though?
Well, remember, the 6 that are there are the only ones that don't have a trigger mechanism in them. Well, they do, rather, but a different kind of trigger. But the only ones that don't have a thread with a bomb in them. Based on seeing the lockers explode, Toki seeing them explode on the previous loop.
I'm missing a letter, so I'll have to try to figure out what that is.
Either that or that's a space. It's 2 words, maybe.
Well, you do have, remember, you have another set of names with the time cards. Because some of those same names are on the time cards, remember?
Are those 6 names without the thread on any of those time cards?
Randall, Dana, Morrison, R. There's only 13 time cards there, but those 3 are, and then to scratch that one could potentially be 2. You just need to kind of know what you're looking for, I guess. Or rather, tell me what it is you're looking for. By the time you've made it all the way in here, we're at about 11:17, so you're still doing okay on time. Sako, you okay for 5:30?
Yeah, we can go up to 5:30.
Okay. Becky, what are you thinking?
Are there any of the time cards that don't match the locker names?
There is, in fact. There is one that does not match the lockers. There's a name, Sarah, S-E-R-A, is on a time card, but is not on any of the lockers.
That's probably the scratched off one.
We have an S.
So if that was the case, if Sarah is one of those, that's how it would look. So with what Ketis had kind of intuited about these maybe spelling something in each of these first letters, you got everybody on the same page? Everybody understands what he was referring to there? That the first letter of the name is just a letter of the alphabet?
Yeah.
So that being said, if those 6 letters, A, R, D, M, I, and S, were to spell something, what might that be? Something that Hetty, who you've all had plenty of interactions with, and isn't necessarily the sharpest person, but maybe a little more clever than people give her credit for. If she wanted a word that she would remember every single time that she needed to come down here and needed to be able to kind of get through this quickly, but other people probably wouldn't be able to figure out just by looking at it, what might she spell with those 6 letters? This is a tough puzzle, guys. Don't be discouraged. It's not an easy puzzle for sure.
I'll think of her mindset. I mean, she likes root beer barrels. She blows things up. That's all she knows. She likes gremlins.
I was thinking of candy, but root beer barrels, candy is what I keep thinking.
Well, this is also, remember, this is a trap. So if she's thinking, okay, here's the trap, I need to get through it, what do I need to do to this trap?
Disarm.
Okay.
Yeah. D-I-S-A-R-M. Disarm.
So what are you guys doing?
So you'd open Dana first.
Yeah.
You guys gonna be careful and hide around the corner and have Toki do it? Or are you just gonna go balls out and just do it? Just yank the D. Is that what you're gonna do? Yank the D. That's not how I meant that to sound.
Balls out and yank the D, man.
Yep.
Dear HR, my DM.
Yeah, thankfully there's no HR department for D&D. All right, so you guys, you're all covering your faces, just being real careful just in case. Mage hand just standing, at a little bit of a distance just in case. Maybe you can buy yourselves a little extra time. You go up and you lift the handle for Dana, and there's the click of the lock releasing and the door opening, and the locker is empty and nothing happens. What do you do?
Isaac.
Isaac.
Okay. All right. So you go over to Isaac, lift the handle. Same thing. It's silence. It just opens up. There's a kind of a slight creak. These lockers are old, and there's a lot of dust in here, so there's a little bit of a creak as it opens, but otherwise nothing.
Alright, so Sarah then?
Okay.
Or
So you
well,
guys-
the scratched off one.
Yeah, the scratched off one. So you go on through the rest. You go through the S, through Abernathy, through Randall, and finally Morrison. And as you open the locker for Morrison, you hear a click from the door. And at first it's like an oh shit moment, like okay, we fucked it up. We set it off. But sure enough, there's a click from the door. Everything else is silent. Nothing's moved. You guys are still alive. Everything seems fine.
Open the door.
Okay.
Yeah, check the door.
All right, so you guys head on over there. The door, sure enough, when you go over to it now, there's a giant wheel, think of it like a submarine door, like the bulkhead doors that you see in a sub when you see like a movie in a submarine, that kind of stuff. But that wheel, when you start spinning it to the left, those giant deadbolts, you got to rotate it a while because those deadbolts are massive and heavy. But as you're spinning this wheel to the left, those deadbolts are slowly receding into the door. There is, as you're kind of rotating it, Ketis, you're watching because you saw where that thread was, and you were kind of afraid that maybe that thread was going to trigger or set something off. But as you're spinning it and rotating it in, the thread is getting kind of bunched up inside the deadbolt and getting pulled inside the door, but it doesn't look like it's triggered anything. And after a good solid 45 seconds or so of spinning this wheel, the deadbolts are completely out of the way. It's a heavy door, but it's well maintained. But it's unlocked, and you can kind of start to slowly open it, and it moves. Again, it's heavy, but I mean it does move smoothly, and you're able to kind of slide it out, and you're now able to move on. Harold, stop.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're stepping in then?
Yep, stepping in.
Okay. As soon as the door is actually opened from the orbs above your guys' heads that Peter sent out, you can see that this is barely a room and more of basically like the entrance to an elevator. You basically you're looking forward and you see like an old mine shaft rather crank handle elevator, like the big kind of industrial style that moves really slow up and down. And there aren't really walls. You're basically just standing on a platform with a small railing around the outside of it. That is just at the top of the giant elevator mine shaft. Like there's no walls around you. You're literally just in open air with a big pulley and a rope that's lowering you down. So I mean, you're at the top of that. You do notice a plaque that says Miller Locomotion on the sidewall frame of the elevator there. It is now, you're at about 11:20 at this point. You guys gonna get in the elevator and move down?
I'm just kind of test it and make sure it's gonna hold first. I'm gonna put a foot on it before we go stepping on.
Roll an investigation.
Too excited because we figured out the puzzle and we're fucking killing ourselves.
Good job, by the way. That was a really tough puzzle.
That was fun though.
So you put your foot on one edge of it, and you immediately feel that it's not stable in the sense that you're literally standing. If you were to move your weight onto it, you'd be standing on a platform that is hanging from a single rope. There's not secured, it's not hanging from multiple ropes that would keep it even or anything else. It's just one rope in the top center of this thing, while you guys would be lowered down. It looks secure. The rope looks in fine shape. You don't see anything that would give you an impression that it wouldn't be safe. Just that maybe you need to kind of keep your weight balanced. So you guys stand over here, I'll stand over here, kind of thing. But beyond that, it seems fine. It would be able to sway very easily if the weight was all on one side, that kind of thing. Gonna hop on.
Looking around, are there any weighted items like a barrel or chest or something?
Yeah, I mean, not even an investigation needed because it's such a tiny little room. It's basically just this mine shaft. That's it. So that giant door just went into this mine shaft. And remember, this was basically the break room. So the miners presumably would come up here for their break and then go back down. Unless they went through one of the other routes that you guys didn't go. But from here, looking there, there are crates and barrels all over the place, but there does happen to be a relatively small barrel that looks like it's probably filled with. You smell sulfur coming from it. It's probably filled with some kind of an explosive, but that you could use as a weight if you needed to. It's probably about 10 pounds on it. Or sorry, no, that's be more than that. Let's call it 35 pounds on its own.
What do you think? All four of us jump on a corner and go down?
Yeah.
Well, three of us plus the barrel.
Sure. So you kind of you grab the barrel and you walk on with it. It's not so unstable that like it would tip, that you would need to worry about falling off, but it would be a little less scary basically if you guys did kind of balance out your weight like that. So you set the barrel in one corner and then you walk over to the other side, Peter. Navarre, you kind of step into the opposite end, and then Ketis in the corner. And you're all kind of on there just fine. There's a giant crank handle by Ketis that looks like you would basically kind of rotate this handle. It's like a wheel with a handle sticking out of it, and you just kind of keep turning it and turning and turning, and it's probably going to take you a while because it looks like the shaft goes down a very long ways. But you basically would use that to either move yourself up or down. That's what it looks like.
Turn it.
Okay.
When everybody's secured.
Okay. All right, so everybody's in place. Then you start rotating it, and sure enough, the thing moves relatively smooth. You don't even have to really put that much like arm effort into spinning this thing. It's a well-made device. You recognized Miller Locomotion from being Lucas Miller, from the well, Lucas didn't make this, but Lucas's family, the Miller family, with the technological improvements that were stolen from other realities, other worlds. Remember? You guys know who I'm talking about? You remember?
The one that made the mirror.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was using the mirror to look through to other realities. But anyways, you kind of are moving this thing, and it's surprisingly smooth. It works fantastic. You guys are lowering yourself down. Only a couple seconds later, basically, your head is dipped below the room that you just exited, and you're just in this somewhat claustrophobic but dense channel, basically going straight down. As gravity, of course, is taking the elevator down with you. And you're going for a good 3-4 minutes before you even start to see anything below you. You guys are, all kind of near the edges, so you can kind of look down carefully. You're a little cautious about it because you don't know how far it's going to go down, but what was that?
Oh, sorry, I hit a wine glass.
But yeah,
It's a good sound effect for the elevator.
this is a ding women's wear. But yeah, you guys make it to. You keep going, and by the time you get all the way down, you kind of starts to open up into this big chamber. It's been 5 minutes of just rotating this thing, at a decent pace, but enough that you're not going to be plummeting. But you make it down to the floor, very, very far below. The entire time, and you notice this happening dramatically. The entire time that you've been lowering yourself down, it's getting cold. It's getting colder and colder and colder during this descent. You're actually starting to shiver a little bit from the rapid transition compared to the cloying heat above. The moisture that's still in the air here is starting to stick to the skin a little bit and like making you shiver. But the outside of the elevator, though, it starts to open up to this massive cavern. It's about you're kind of just coming below the ceiling here. It's about 30 to 40 feet up. You guys are about 30 to 40 feet up to the floor below, but it's 100 plus feet across. This cavern is so far that the light that from these orbs is barely bouncing off the distant walls. The elevator finally lowers down to the ground here, and as soon as it hits the ground, you guys, well, I mean, you can see this ahead of time, but you're looking out, you see that there is a railed mine track that's going through here, kind of what you would expect to see with mine carts and everything. You hadn't seen it up above where those kind of tunnels were dug out, but maybe there wasn't, the ore that they needed, they didn't need these carts for at that point. But you've gotten to the bottom now there, and you see that there are 4 carts that are lined up in a row on this mine track that looks like it goes off into the distance, into the darkness, past where you can see. One of them is filled with just chunks of dark ore, just some dark rocks that have been pulled out of the side. But you've basically gotten to the bottom here. You see that one of these carts has ore in it. The other 3 seem to be empty. But you're now basically in this massive tunnel, stepping off the elevator. What are you guys doing?
All right, well, first thing, kind of look around and make sure it doesn't look like anything's moving, right? From what I can see.
Make a perception check. That's a good roll. You rolled a 19. You are hearing in the distance, and this is a little ways away, so you're not like immediately panicked by it or anything, but you're hearing a very slow grinding sound, a sound that sounds like gravel moving, like rocks that are tumbling over each other over and over and over, and it's coming this direction, but it's very far away, and it doesn't sound like it's moving that fast.
Does it sound like it's keeping a steady sound, like it's keeping a steady pace?
It does stop and start. So it's not consistent. It's not basically constantly going like a river would sound. Let's say it definitely sounds like something with sentience. Let's say something alive, but sounds a little bit like gravel. Like rocks.
Inform the group of where I sense that coming from, where I saw it coming
Sure.
from, here coming from.
Yeah, as soon as Navarre and Peter, as soon as he kind of points that out to you, kind of listening for a second, everybody's just stopping still for a moment. You hear the same thing coming in the distance. Time-wise, we are. Let's see. You're looking at probably 11. Let's say 11:26 right now, for the amount of time that it took you to get down the elevator and everything.
When we looked, was there just looked like one way to go, kind of like in a tunnel? Or?
Yeah, you're basically at the kind of, let's say, the north end of this chamber, and all there is that's close by you are crates and barrels and things like that, the same kind of implements that you've been seeing in this mine shaft all over the place. And then this track, this track of cars. You see 3 mine carts that are empty and one that has ore filled in it.
You guys want to follow the direction of the tracks?
Is it an upward slope or downward slope going towards this noise?
A very slight downward slope. It's mostly level. I mean, to the naked eye, it would look level, but when you step with your feet, you can kind of tell that there's a little bit of a downward slope.
Donkey Kong Country and jump in those carts, go overhead.
Save some time, it picks up speed.
Yeah.
but at the same time, we won't have the control of knowing our environment before we run into a room.
Whoever's looking at the carts, make an investigation check.
Okay.
I'll just make a check.
Yeah, you can all three do it. Doesn't matter. Whoever's looking at the carts. Natural 20. I think that's only a second of the night.
Finding a lot of them.
That works like it.
Navarre is looking for butterflies and bugs to look at. Not a lot of bugs to look at down here. But Peter, looking at, I mean, you don't even step close to these before knowing that you would need to be trusting of these wheels. First thing you look at is the wheels, and sure enough, 2 of them have broken wheels. These are big. They're heavy mine carts because they need to be able to carry this ore, and these giant steel wheels, 2 of them are bent so much that they're not sitting on the track anymore, and the carts are listing off to one side. And it's the front 2. So there's 2 that with broken wheels. One of them is the front wheel, one of them is the back wheel, or a front and back wheel. And then the third cart, which looks fine by looking at it. There are also handles in each of these, by the way. It looks like the handles can move in any of 4 directions. So front, back, left, and right. The handle is inside the cart on each of these. And then the last cart is filled. And the last one looks like it's not the same kind of cart. And it is connected to the third, but it looks like you could disconnect that if you needed to.
I say, let's give it a shot. Follow me, Indy. I know the way.
Well, the front 2 carts have wheels that are bent. And they're in the way and they're heavy.
We all get to one side. Can we tip them over off the track?
You can certainly try. That's up to me. That's up to you.
Yeah.
All 3 of us give it a good push, top heavy.
Okay. All right, so you guys all move over to one side. All 3 of you roll an athletics check. I want you to beat an average of the 3 of you, an average of, let's call it a 14, because it's really heavy. With that 4, I don't think we're going to make it. Divided by 3 is an average of 10.3. You try, and you're just trying to heave against the side of this thing, and it's just, I mean, you can tip it, like you can get it off so that it's only on the 2 wheels on the far side, the non-broken wheel side. And I say broken, but it's really that it's kind of bent out of shape. But you kind of, you tip it and you get it up on those 2 wheels, but it's just not enough to tip it over. You want to try again? I'll give you one more attempt, basically, for trying that, means of getting it off the track.
Sure.
Okay. Here, let me do that so we get another roll. Go ahead.
Finally.
I think that made it. Just barely, 16.66. So you guys, you kind of give it a good heave, and this time you kind of felt where the weight of this thing really was, and you kind of just put a good shoulder into it, and since you knew really where the center of gravity was for this thing, and tip it, and sure enough, it falls on over with a loud bang that just rattles through this giant cavern, and you hear it echo into the distance, and then echo right back just from the size of this cavern. But you do get that one off the track. We can hand wave the second portion. You get the second one off the track. Now you're looking at this third cart. All 3 of you could fit, but it's going to be really tight to get the 3 of you into this one cart. It's not really intended for multiple people for human transport. Is that what you're trying to do? All 3 of you going to get in there?
Is the other one on the same track, the one that's loaded with the...
So you've got the front 2 that had busted wheels or bent wheels. You've pushed off, and they're now laying on the side. Then you have the third one, which is empty and has a handle in it that the 3 of you could presumably just barely fit in. Toki might have to, ride on a shoulder for risk of getting stepped on. And then behind that is the fourth one, and the fourth one is still connected to the third. It looks like it was probably, specifically for that, for being able to move it back and forth. The fourth one being like a storage kind of a cart. But it looks like you could disconnect it. So.
You are? Yeah. So I was going to say, I don't know how high it's piled on there, but I could, ride on that one. You guys could ride on the other one or something if you wanted to. Although, that might be hard to stop it with all that weight on the back of it when we get to the end of the track.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. Should we all try to cram on one or what? All that weight will be harder too. I don't know.
Got another 20 minutes or so before Sako needs to go. The sound in the distance, by the way, we're at about after you guys kind of taking that time to push that thing over. We're at 11:29. That sound in the distance is it's getting closer, but you've noticed now that it doesn't sound like it's coming from ahead anymore. Now it sounds like it's coming from above. About 30 feet. 30 between some spots it's 30 feet, some spots it's 40. The roof of this chamber isn't a smooth thing. It's a rocky surface, and it looks like whatever that sound was is coming from above in the ceiling. Not directly above you, but above, and then still, down this chamber, this 100+ foot chamber.
All right.
And since you haven't moved or done anything else, time-wise, we've ticked into earthquake time, and you feel the whole place begin to rattle and shake. And under here, this far down, that is a much more scary experience than it is just being on the surface above. You kind of knew this was coming because you guys are kind of mentally keeping track of the time yourselves, which is represented by me telling you the time, of course. But you feel the whole place shake, and you start to hear the scary part of this, which is the earth cracking around you. And when you're this far underground, there would be no surviving if it were to cave in. If it caved in the tunnel above you, it's already over anyways. Luckily for you, you're in this time loop, but you do hear cracks coming from the ceiling above you, and the ground is rattling underneath you, and you're kind of steadying yourselves by holding onto this heavy cart. You're not knocked to your feet or anything like that, but it is a very violent shaking coming through this place. And the cracks you hear in the ceiling, above this chamber there, are loud, and there are two different spots where a massive boulder kind of breaks off from the ceiling. One just being a giant boulder, and one of them being a stalactite that kind of plummets to the ground and then crashes into the floor, which just causes its own kind of echoing, cacophonous sound that just fills this whole room. And then once everything is finally settled, you can hear that gravelly kind of moving sound again. And now that it's closer and doesn't sound like it's coming through the walls anymore, it sounds like it's actually in this chamber with you. There's a small distinction that roll a perception, all three of you. Both.
Roll the tower.
It's fine. It's normally yes for perception, but in this case it's fine. The reason for that, Sako, I think I've explained it too, but perception, you wouldn't necessarily know whether you notice or something or not. And if you rolled like a 20, let's say, and I told you that you saw something, then you might assume that it was important, but maybe it wasn't, that kind of stuff. So just to keep you from metagaming really is what the tower's for. But in this case, it's fine. Specifically, Peter and Ivara, now that the sound is not being kind of filtered through the rocks and you're hearing it actually in the chamber with you, there is a very slight distinction that whereas before it sounded like gravel rolling over each other, now it sounds like bone rolling over each other. Like if you were to take a pile of bones and roll it around, and specifically, Peter, you're very familiar with that sound because that's how you kind of every day you're rolling chunks of bone and wood together, and that's what this sounds like. And it's in there. You're hearing this in the chamber with you, coming from the ceiling. Still far away, not directly above you.
It's very unnerving. Do we see any spice melange around here?
It's not a. We're not talking a. Oh goddammit, Arrakis. So we're not talking the worms. I can't remember what they're called. Shehalud? Is that the name of the worm?
I think so, Shahilud.
So, anyways, it's it doesn't sound like a worm. It sounds like bones rolling over each other. You can't see anything. It's too far down the chamber for it right now. But yeah, you're hearing this sound. What are you guys doing? The earthquake has happened. We're now at 11:31.
You guys want to roll in the cart or just run down?
You can all three fit in that cart. It's just going to be a little bit of a tight fit. That's all.
Let's cruise the cart then.
Yeah.
And I'm going. Making sure I look up on a regular basis too.
You're doing what?
As
G?
we travel. Looking up on a regular basis as we travel.
Okay. You kind of you just intuit that if there's something above you, maybe you should yank your shield out. So you hop in, you kind of grab your shield and you throw it up over your head, trying to kind of cover your party there as much as you can as well. Peter, you're kind of keeping the orbs following along, and you're all just hopping in the cart and getting ready to move. Who's driving? Who's going to be? There's a handle in the front. Who's going to be controlling that?
If not, I'm going to make sure that I can pay attention to what's above us and have my shield ready.
Okay. Do we want to trust a woman driver in this case?
My name. It's okay.
I'm totally kidding. I'm just.
I do
You know.
not parallel park very well.
Well, thankfully, minecarts kind of park themselves. There's not a lot of parallel parking issues with minecarts, but
Well, I got my phone with YouTube queued up for the Indiana Jones minecart music. So,
in case a rock is going to chase you, a giant boulder.
yeah, you never know when you got to jump the track. So
All right, so Navarra.
I can tell you.
Okay, all right, so
Yeah.
Peter's going to do. Okay, who's doing it? You guys decide. Come on, somebody speak up.
You can do it, Navarre, if you like, but if you don't want to, I'll jump on it.
But you can
All
try.
right.
You're smaller too, but it might actually be easier if you didn't.
Okay.
We're the thing with all of us in there.
I just hope I'm strong enough to move it around.
Well, I mean, you've all hopped in, and it actually feels, decently. In fact, you see another Miller plaque on the side of this thing. It looks like this is, well made and designed in a, intuitive way. The handle moves freely, and you kind of you have to. There's a like a handle you hold, and once you're holding that down, once you've kind of squeezed the trigger for this thing, essentially, the handle moves smooth, left to right, forward, back, however you need it to go. But you let the handle go, and it locks in place. So you've pulled the handle back and just, intuit how the only way that it would move, of course. You pull the handle back so that you're kind of depressing it, and then you slide the handle forward, and sure enough, the cart starts to move forward. You didn't disconnect the ore cart from behind you, so it's not moving fast, but you let go of the handle, and now your cart is kind of starting to slowly move its way forward. And that ore cart is just kind of keeping along with you. But you kind of slowly start to move down this path. You're beginning to roll along this rail line for this chamber. Kita's looking up. You're not seeing anything yet except for all these giant cracks and kind of fissures that opened up that are obviously new. Like there's a ton of them all over here because this place has probably had earthquakes at some point. But you don't see anything recent except for the one that just happened where these giant rocks had just fallen from. But the rail begins to move through this giant massive chamber that was, from where you could see probably 100 feet in the distance from where you'd gotten off the elevator. But now you see that this massive chamber isn't 100 feet. It goes on for a very, very long ways. And as you're kind of beginning to go down it for what seems like forever, you're just sailing through the darkness. You're kind of not moving fast, but at a decent enough pace where you're kind of getting a little bit of wind through the air, which is even more chilly. But you see that this mine, they dug a lot of it out, and as you can see down the path, that there are these small things that you're starting to notice that are moving on the ceiling. And you start to see them on the walls as well. And from this distance, you're not able to get a great look at them because it's just too dim and they're too far away because this chamber is so wide. But they look almost like bugs from what you can see. Go ahead.
Is it alright since we're all bunched together? Can I take my 4 orbs and spread them out? One in the front as far as it'll go, one in the rear as far as it'll go, and kind of 2 in a V pattern above us to get them out as far as possible so we can see
Sure.
them.
So you can get a little bit of a view of what you're seeing. Looking around at first, so also you're still moving at a decent enough pace, and they're a little bit further away. But yeah, you've got them spread out so you can kind of get as much illumination in this chamber as you can, which is helping a lot because you can see quite a bit further ahead also. But these things that at first look like bugs, you see that they're not one entity so much, but each of them look like a pile of bones, essentially in the shape of a bug almost. And it looks like the bones are kind of rolling over each other, like these are somehow animated. I don't have a picture for you, but basically they look like piles of small bones. They're not like human bones necessarily, but maybe a small animal that was or even a collection of that had died. But these basically collections of bones that each seem to be moving as individual entities, not just one, not a swarm of them. It's not or not a like a bunch of them all together, like a whole bunch of them together. Each of them might be a pile of probably a foot or so across. So would be very big for bug size, but because they're just everywhere, that's what gave you the impression of it being bug-like. But they're everywhere. They're all over the place. You're starting to see them even directly above you as you're moving along. And Ketis, you're kind of throwing the shield up just in case and kind of peeking around the corner just a little bit in case one of these decided to drop on you. But you are kind of continuing to sail on through the darkness here with these things just all around. And that's you heard them all kind of coming towards you when you had just gotten off the elevator, but it looks like they're just freaking everywhere. And now that the earthquake has kind of opened up spots for them, they're not digging through the rocks anymore. They just kind of come out through the cracks that the earthquake had opened up. but you're just kind of continuing on. So far, it doesn't seem like they're doing much to try to harass you. Maybe they would if you were still or something, but maybe they can't catch you or something. You don't really know necessarily. But you're kind of sailing on through these different passageways. You see on either side of you, you see where there are open tunnels that go kind of almost at regular intervals, where maybe they were following a certain line of the whatever ore they were mining out of this place, and diamonds, for example, because since you seem to know that's what they've got here. But there are just these kind of deep passageways or some holes in the floor, just different places that have all been kind of mined out from this. But you get the impression as you're kind of going down this that this was the main tunnel for the whole mine, because there's so many little tributaries that go off on either side. But you keep on driving through the dark for a good solid. I mean, this you're going for a long time. It was 11:30, basically 11:31 when you got in this cart and started moving, and you're going for a very long time. Your arm's starting to get tired of holding it over your head. Just trying to do a little mental math, it feels like it's been probably about 15 minutes at this point of you just sailing through the dark here. So we're coming up about 11:45. You don't even hear the boom coming from above from the bank robbery, but as you're getting further and further in here, you're starting to feel like a gravelly feeling almost on the rail underneath you. So the cart is like shaking a little bit almost, that the tracks are starting to feel coarse. The cart's beginning to vibrate a little bit under you. It's slowing down. The weight of the cart behind you, the ore cart behind you, is slowing it down, and your pace is about half as fast as it was, and it feels like you may not even have enough momentum to continue. Like this might even just stop here, and you'd have to walk the rest of the way because of how coarse the rails are going with that extra weight behind you. So you're slowing down a bunch. You still have a long ways to go. You can't see the end yet. Are you doing anything? You're going to let it stop and then walk? What are you doing?
Is it a slow, gradual slowdown, as if there's like sand or something on the rail itself?
That's exactly what it feels like. Yeah, it feels like there's dirt or something that is on the rail. Maybe the earthquake had dislodged a bunch of dirt that has landed on the rail that is causing the slowdown. But yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. It's slowing you down.
Is it a possibility? Do I have the capability right now to push out 10 feet in front of the cart via prestidigitation, my burst of wind or burst of air, to see if I can blast the dust off?
Sure. What spell are you using? Prestidigitation?
Prestidigitation, yeah.
Let's see that. I mean, you can clean things with it. The range is 10 feet. It's every 6 seconds you'd be casting it. You're probably moving faster than that, but just for the sake of for the cool factor, yeah, you can do that. You're basically 10 feet ahead of you, kind of continuing to just clean the track basically in front of you, while you're just holding your hand out over the track and down off to the side, and just Nivara can actually see this, Ketis, you're still kind of eyes on the ceiling, but you're watching all this dust and shit that is just all over the track being kind of blown away in like a cow catcher, almost like at the front of a train with a cow catcher, just pushing all that stuff away and cleaning the track, and it continues on its way. It's kind of giving you a little bit of your speed back. It's still being slowed by that minecart in the back, but it is getting you a little bit of distance there. And you see up ahead, and you're kind of coming towards what looks like probably the end of this. You see a big wooden stopper as the cart begins to slow near the end of this track, and the handle it's slowing, but you're still moving too fast. So Nivara holding that or looking at the handle there, you do kind of get the impression you probably need to slow yourself down when you get close to it. But you're coming up basically on this big wooden platform that is at the end of the track that is vertical, that sticks up on the end of the track that the cart would crash into if it were to keep going and stop it. You do see behind it, kind of growing larger as you're getting closer and closer, is another of these massive industrial doors. And there's a big sign on it that says "Open" right above a big solid iron ring on the door, like a handle. So then that's coming up close, and you do see something hanging from that ring, by the way, from that door handle. But you're coming up near the end of the track there. What are you guys doing?
I'm gonna pull the brake, I guess.
Pull the handle back?
Down.
Okay.
Yeah.
It moves smooth. You're able to pull it right back, no difficulty whatsoever. There is kind of a scree, kind of a loud, echoing, just ear-piercing kind of a sound, very obnoxious, very, very painful almost to hear because it's just echoing through here. As the wheels stop turning, but there's still so much momentum that with that weight of that ore cart behind you that is kind of just bare metal on bare metal scraping as it's moving towards the end here. But it does, slowly come to a stop with that kind of ringing continuing through your ears. Very unfortunate sound, nails on a chalkboard kind of sound. But it's kind of slowed down and then stops. You still got 10 feet or so before you hit the wooden thing, so you're nice and safe. Still, you're far enough ahead that you're still hearing the kind of bone rumbling sounds, but they are back quite a ways. They're not close by you. But you're now basically at the end of this cart with a massive industrial door, something hanging from the handle. What are you guys doing?
Go check out the door.
What's hanging from that handle?
It looks familiar. It looks like a bundle of grapes. And there's a small disc on the front of it. From here, if you're getting out and going to look at it, you can get, a better look at it. But from here, you can just see that there's a small disc on the front of the bundle of grapes.
Let's check out that disc carefully, of course, but don't touch it.
Okay. Everybody roll an investigation if you're looking. Whoever is looking. Nice. Natural 20 for Peter. That's 3 natural 20s for Peter tonight. Nobody else yet. Peter's stealing all the good rolls. Even from a distance, Peter, as you're getting out of it, you look at it. Yeah, that's a clock. There's a small clock face with numbers ticking from, or numbers that start at 60 and all the way around until it says 1. And then the timer is at the top in the middle between the 60 and the 1. How far? So I say that in that you just got out of the cart and all 3 of you were standing 15 feet away from the door and you saw that, Peter, and said that. What are you guys doing?
Can we
And
determine
then we
if
got
that's just like a fuse for the bomb?
Oh, yeah, good point.
I would say let's make that as a separate roll, and you still would have some proficiency for having some familiarity with explosives. Let's call that, we'll call it another investigation check. That's fine. We'll just for Peter on the investigation of what kind of a bomb this might be or what the trigger might be. Hey, your luck ran out finally. Still a decent roll, though, with your proficiency. Looking at it, you see that the clock on the front of it looks like a timer of some sort. And it does look to be attached to the bomb. It's not just hanging there. It does look like it's attached to the grape shot. And to the right of that, actually beside this door, it looks like it's part of the means of unlocking this door. There's another card slot. Kind of similar to the time clock slot that you saw earlier. This one doesn't say time or anything on it, and there's no other cards nearby that you can see, but a similar slot where a card would be inserted of that same shape and size, it appears. You do, by the way, looking around, with that investigation, I'll give you this information as well. You don't see the footprints that you took to be Hetty's. You don't see them around here at all. You see much larger footprints around here. In fact, you only see one set of footprints around here, and they are larger. More like a man size, let's say.
What do you think? Blow the door, look around.
How much longer do you have, Sako?
A couple more minutes.
All right. Yeah, if we're running on time here, we can just call it here, and we can pick up here next weekend. But it might take you some time to figure out what to do here. I'm not sure. What do you guys want to do?
What do you? I mean, we got plenty of time, so it's up to.
I only got until about 5:30 or so.
Yeah, we might as well just call it here, guys. I mean, this is a good spot anyway, because a little bit further in would take another 20 minutes or so anyways to go through that. So what we'll do is we'll call it here, and we'll just pick up at this spot next week. But what I want you to do is, if you guys have any ideas of what you want to start at next week, you can just drop them in that chat that I told you about, and then we'll kind of be able to pick up right where we left off, rather than having to go through everything again to remind everybody where you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, we will close it there then.